All right, so my guest today is Mitchell Snyder, and he's on a self-perfected mission where he's a key founder of a Facebook group, Self-Perfected, that helps people like live their best life expressions of themselves. And in this group, people really learn how to reflect on their past, investigate it, create and live the change they want daily, and then actually live as the best expression of themselves. And Mitchell's really in like helping in the self-development movement and turning that into a movement of self-perfection. So Mitchell, how are you today, my man?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks. How you doing, Ryan?
It's good, man. It's a good day over here in California. So just appreciating it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So can you give like a little bit on your background, like your story, your journey, like who is Mitchell kind of like growing up to now, what you're kind of into and doing now, and how did you really end up where you are today?
Yeah. Well, I got to say thanks for the intro. That was pretty comprehensive. Yeah, how I got here. Well, first I just want to say with self-perfected and this idea of self-perfection, a lot of people talk about self-improvement and like self-help, self-development, that kind of thing. And just to be frank, I'm just going to be a little blunt here. Maybe we have to censor this, but usually when people say I'm doing self-development, it's usually bullshit. Don't get me wrong. Yes, there's a time and place where you can do some self-development and everything, but here's the main thing. People will say, I'm working on myself up until a point. And that's when they either face extreme resistance or extreme fear, and they have to really get out of their comfort zone. And that's when they back down. Self-perfection is going through that point and actually expanding. And is it always happy and fun and all that? No, sometimes it's tough, but you become so much more in that process. There's a term called anti-fragile. And when you're anti-fragile, it means every time you get hit, you actually get stronger. And there's a lot of very cool research on that and everything, but that's, in essence, that's what self-perfection is about perfecting yourself, purifying yourself in that process. So that's what that is. But to your question, how did I get here? So I'm in right outside Minneapolis, Minnesota. I grew up here. I liked it, but I felt like I was in a bit of a bubble. I remember like growing up watching the news and just hearing about like the suffering in the world, how every day, it's like every 17 seconds, a species goes extinct. Like that's insane. The rate that like the Amazon is still on fire. Remember last year it was such a big issue. Oh, the Amazon's on fire. It's still on fire. So like, I remember just hearing this stuff as a young kid and just being very troubled and asking myself, can I do anything about this? Like, can I do anything? Or like, should I, like, I didn't know, but I wanted to see a better world for myself and for others. Plus I want to have kids and grandkids. Like, do I want them coming into a world where, you know, there's like no rainforest left? Like that sounds pretty bad. So fast forward, I learned about psychology. That was like the first thing that really opened my mind is, because I remember being like anxious and depressed all the time. And then I took a psychology class in high school and I was like, wow, this is what my mind is. This is what these emotions are. Wow, I have something called dopamine. That's pretty valuable. And so I learned that, and it was like a seed that got planted. And I kind of was playing around with this idea of, hey, if more people could understand the mind, could understand psychology, we could create a better world. So that led me to university, right? I got my 4-year degree in psychology. Just to be blunt, like the stuff we talk about in the self-perfected group, like DIP and self-forgiveness writing, you can learn more in a free online course called DIP Lite than I did in my entire 4 years at university. University is not designed to actually help you really level up and change the world. It's designed to make employees, just to be blunt. That's the education system. We can get more into that. But then how I got like here is, so I'm studying psychology. Then I was about to go to grad school, and thankfully I got declined. They said I needed 1 more year of work experience, and I'm so grateful for that, because the same day I got declined, one of my friends handed me the book 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, one co-founders of PayPal, all that, right? Billionaire from Silicon Valley. And in that book, he explains how you can use technology to fundamentally innovate and disrupt society, going from 0 to 1. Like you're at 0, you invent technology, you can now go to a new level. And that stuck with me, man. So I'm like, okay, I could maybe use technology to help people change their minds. And that's how we could actually change the world for the better. So that, like, now my gears are turning, right? And then I realized I don't know shit about business. And if I want to change the world, I think we got to go through business, at least part of it. So then I threw myself in the deep end, right? I worked with this guy, Gerard Adams. He grew the business Elite Daily. He sold it for $50 million. I worked with him right after that. I became his right-hand man for 2 years. So I just like threw myself in the deep end. I also worked with Ty Lopez. I know he's got a lot of haters. The dude's a genius. You cannot argue with that. He knows who he's going after. So I also spent a year with Ty, like going to his house, just learning from him. So I'm a big fan of throwing myself into things and then just figuring it out. But now this was like 5-ish years ago. And the real thing then, that when it came all full circle, was, so I grew up in Minneapolis, but then I'm living on the East Coast. I lived on the West Coast. I lived in San Diego. I lived in South America. And I learned how to build a network of people, people who want to make a difference. And then that then led me to a couple tools in particular, such as Techno Tutor, SelfForgiveness, that kind of thing. And then it became kind of the basis for Self-Perfected. So yeah, it's been a journey, but I'd say the common thread is that I genuinely want to make a difference in the world. And I realize it comes back to myself first, right? You can't help everyone if you can't help yourself. But I figured out a few things along the way, and I've been surrounded by amazing people. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Yeah, man, you could definitely see the passion in how you just articulated that story. And where I want to go with this, a lot of people, we say we want to make a big impact in the world. We want to have a good heart. We want to have good intentions and do big things. But sometimes it can be kind of hard to be clear on like the impact we want to make. Like, you're very clear on what you want to do because you've been on this journey for a little while now. So can you share some insights into how people can go about clarifying something like making an impact or bettering the world for themselves?
Yeah, that's an awesome place to begin. I would say one of the best beginner-friendly exercises would be take a blank piece of paper, set a little timer on your phone. If this sounds intimidating to you, well, just hear out the exercise first, and then you can learn something about yourself, even through listening to this. So what I would do is I'd take a blank piece of paper and a pen and just set a timer for however long and just write, what would I do if money did not matter? Like, you have $5 trillion in your bank account. What would you do? Would I open up a homeless shelter? Would I get a Ferrari? Would I have a beach home? Would I, retire my parents? Like, you do that exercise once, you do it again, you're going to expand yourself. You're going to see, wow, this is what I want to do with my life. And here's the little golden nugget in it is, if you do that exercise and you're more depressed afterwards, that's a very good indicator that you are in a bad spot and you really got to work on yourself. Because the ideal would be you sit down and you're writing that list and you get more and more excited. So yeah, that would be a great place to start to kind of get clear on that. And it'd be something you'd want to do multiple times, because as you can clarify that vision, it becomes very powerful.
Ooh, that's so true. And I like how you said there can be a difference in kind of having these like negative feelings or these darker feelings versus being like excited towards something. And as you're like doing this exercise, you're pushing yourself in either direction to really clarify, do I want this or do I want that? Or is what I'm saying I want not really congruent with how I'm feeling or like where I should be working towards? At least that's what I kind of took for that. Am I understanding right?
Yeah, 100%. It's like, if I'm writing down, I want to have 5 sports cars and a home in Hollywood Hills or whatever, but I feel like shit when I'm doing that, that's a pretty good indicator that you don't actually trust yourself to make money. So, hey, that's a goal. There's a gift in itself, right? Now you get to look at, well, how could I go make the money so I could do that? Or how could I go get those connections? So yeah, it's like a very insightful exercise. And it's kind of like a muscle. Like, you do it 1 week, then you do it a week again, you do it a week again. All of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm thinking of new stuff. Like, think about this. Richard Branson or Elon Musk, they're now thinking, how do I create a space station? Like, how do we colonize Mars? Like, that's a pretty big dream, right? Compare that to like, hey, I want to have a second home. Both can be good, but like, how big can you dream? It's like a really powerful exercise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one thing we've kind of gone into detail about is when these negative emotions come from us, or even positive ones, it could be triggered from like past memories or past experiences. And you've really helped me explore my past deeper, improve my journaling skills, reflect better, all that good stuff, right? And so now that I can kind of be more present and become a better version of myself, this has like really helped me with my overall well-being, not only from work, but relationships as well, family, all these kind of things. So for people who really do want to better themselves and may have tried things like you mentioned, self-improvement, reflecting, journaling, do you have any tips for them to get more out of like learning from their past and actually making the change?
Of course. Where do we begin? Here's just a fascinating like baseline question. I would just like to propose this to whoever's listening is we talk about the importance of thoughts, right? Like have good thoughts, positive thinking, all that. So here's a question. Where do your thoughts actually come from? You know, just take a moment for yourself and really ask yourself that question. Like, where do they come from? And you'd be amazed how many people that have even read those books, right? Read Think and Grow Rich and Power of Positive Thinking and all that stuff, right? And then you ask them that question, where do your thoughts come from? And they're kind of guessing, like, oh, is it like some outside source? Is it from within me? I'm not really sure. So I'll just save you the trouble and let you know this, and then I'll answer the question. Is your thoughts are a result. They're a result of the information that has been programmed into you at an unconscious and subconscious level. You might have to rewind that one because it's a lot, but it's like literally, especially when you're a child, age 0 to 7, you are like a sponge. You're literally a sponge that is absorbing information, for better or for worse. So if one of your goals is, I want to be a multimillionaire, and you grew up with parents that were middle class, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for you to become a multimillionaire. And yes, I know there's the success stories, and of course you're going to go to that immediately. But the average person who grows up middle class, they grow up to be middle class. It's their programming. It's like a computer. It was programmed to do that. So I bring this up because that's the foundation now that is best for looking at ourselves and kind of getting rid of this negative stuff. We have been programmed for what we've been programmed for. And a lot of us, if you're not happy with your life, it's a result of that programming. So if we want to now remove this programming that's like, I don't believe in myself, I feel sad sometimes, I feel confused, all that, that's what we got to work on. So one tool that is great for this is called SelfForgiveness writing. And I know I shared this with you a while ago, Ryan, and you've really run with it. It's amazing to see. And it's this phrase, right? You might want to pause this and you can write it down for yourself. But it's a phrase you can always take with you. And it's, I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to blank. Here would be an example. Let's say you're doubting yourself recently. Like you started a new business and you're kind of doubting that it's going to work. Or maybe you know it's going to work, but you kind of doubt how you're going to get there. You could say, hey, I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed myself to doubt myself. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize what I need to do. See, so, and then you can open that up, but stay focused on the doubting. And then you could even pull it back to your original memories of doubt. Like there's a lot to this. And if you want to hear more of like examples, you can join our free Facebook group. It's self-perfected. You have to answer questions to get in. Not just anyone can get in, but it's like, just answer the questions for real. We'll let you in. But self-forgiveness is so helpful because we're basically walking around with a ton of baggage on our backs. And the self-forgiveness is the letting go of that baggage. And you can only get so deep with self-forgiveness, but it's very profound. And I would suggest just practice it for yourself. Do a 20-minute rampage of self-forgiveness. See what you learn. And a indicator that your self-forgiveness is effective is based on how many insights you're getting. Not necessarily how many, but it's like, if you're not getting insights into your life, your self-forgiveness is probably too shallow. But it's a very specific phrase. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to blank. So that's a great one. What have you noticed from the self-forgiveness, Ryan?
That's probably one of the best journaling tools I've used. So I've tried a lot of different ones from like visualization, reflection, and like different people's versions of it. And my interpretation of things, why I think it's so powerful, is you first kind of start with a memory dive or whatever the experience really is, and it puts you in an emotional state of what you actually went through. And a lot of times, myself included, I don't always have the best understanding of what I'm feeling in that moment. I know it's like a positive feeling or a negative feeling, but it's not exactly clear. Is it anxiety? Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it fear? And because of that, then I may not act congruently or whatever, and have these memories kind of just weigh heavily on me. And then being able to go back at that, kind of like put myself in that state, forgive myself for either feeling these things, acting congruently, whatever it may be. And then from this forgiveness, being able to say, like, oh yeah, because I did this, this is how I can do things differently in the past, you know, running away from a fight. Okay, I realized that I shouldn't do that with the people I care about. And then actually being able to say, like, okay, well, then what's the tangible action to kind of commit to changing in order to drive that? And so for me, it's been powerful to not just be like, oh yeah, well, this may be the reason why this happened, or externalizing it, like taking ownership to say, hey, like I can change things about myself to get better. That's what I kind of took. Am I off there?
That's awesome. And I want to just highlight real quickly one point you made, which is then you can now kind of correct yourself in the moment. So you can then forgive yourself for accepting and allowing yourself to react when she uses that tone or whatever. But then in that moment, then you want to commit yourself to a new way of being, such as, hey, I commit myself to breathe and chill for a minute and work towards a solution. So yeah, it's that forgiveness coupled with the behavior change. That's amazing. There's one other tool that I want to bring up in light of your question, which is how do you kind of work through the past and, you know, change that? It's the tool I've seen hands down work extremely well for literally anyone who uses it. It's called Techno Tutor. You're not going to find much about it online because we set it up that way specifically. It's about one-on-one relationships.
Okay, so you mentioned the self-journaling and self-forgiveness as one tool, and I know you have like another tool, Techno Tutor. So can you kind of go into detail on how that's been set up and how it really helps people?
Yeah, for sure. So back to earlier when I was talking about that programming, primarily it comes from the first 7 years of our life. And those are the programs that are really running the show. You have an unconscious mind, and that's like 75% of who you are. So what TechnoTutor is it's a tool that allows you to program in new information into that level. So instead of you having to read a book and spend 3 hours reading and then taking notes and hoping you remember it and hoping you apply it, in 10 minutes, you can take TechnoTutor and get that information in. So it's part of you. So you can use it for business and money-making purposes. Now, one other part is you can use that same tool, TechnoTutor, to deprogram the stuff that's holding you back, such as limiting beliefs, self-doubt, fears, anxiety, anything. You can use it for that. So you could imagine it's pretty helpful. So yeah, that's another tool that I would say is essential in the journey of self-perfection.
Okay, great. And for people who may not necessarily be that far along in their journey, right? They're either just getting started or that may seem like a big leap to them. The last thing I kind of want to explore that you got into is how to really deal with those heavy feelings like the stress and the fear. Because one thing we have talked about a lot is like being truly self-honest with ourselves so that we can work through these things, we can make progress rather than just letting them consume us. And what typically happens is, no action or putting things off or just not even thinking about it. So when it comes to dealing with heavier things for yourself, like fear, guilt, or stress, how should one go about it? Because we can, try to push things off, fight them, pretend like they're not there. But how would you recommend one going about becoming the best versions of themselves and working through these things?
Yeah, awesome question. If you don't work through it, guess what? It's still in there. So you're going to have what's called a time loop where it may be 6 months, it may be a year later, but you're going to hit that same thing, that same wall of guilt or shame or whatever is going to come back. So in order to deal with it, first step, breathe. Any feeling comes up, breathe. Because if you aren't breathing, you're going to go into panic mode into your mind. So breathe. That self-forgiveness statement I shared earlier, I would suggest use that. You always have that with you. And then I would definitely recommend get it written out. like start writing out what is going on. Like, hey, I feel guilty because this person asked me to do something and I don't want to do it, whatever. Get it out, journal it. And then the self-forgiveness is good. Techno Tutor will help you eliminate it. But then also, even to just gain more awareness of it, it's going to help you feel a bit more empowered in dealing with it. And one way that you can do this as well would be in our self-perfected group on Fridays at 5 p.m. Central, so 3 p.m. Pacific. We have what we call our global hangout, which is like-minded people from all around the world jump on Zoom for about an hour and a half, and we just talk about this stuff. We talk about what's working, where we're stuck, and just like really the cutting edge of self-development, which includes business, it includes making money, it includes current events, stuff like that. But it's a very cool group of people that are like-minded. And that way, in that community, you can hear how other people are dealing with those heavy emotions, right? Like gnarly stuff, like people on the brink of divorce working through it, people who having troubled relationships with their kids working through it. So that becomes very inspiring too. So you can see, okay, I'm not doomed. Like I can work through this. It's just going to take some effort and some willpower, and especially in today's day and age, man, you got TikTok, you got Instagram, you got all the distractions, all the excuses in the world, but see it for what it is. That can be an escape and a distraction. So don't give in to that. If you want to enjoy TikTok videos every once in a while, that's cool. But like, really the question is, are you going to take responsibility for your life or not? And if you want to take that responsibility, it's one day at a time, one moment at a time, one point at a time, but you can do that. And that's really at the essence, that's what self-perfection is.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Mitchell. Really appreciated what you said so far. And to the last, minute we kind of got together, you've helped so much with people like making change. Is there any last things you'd like to kind of say, or any last tips, advice, or tricks for people?
Oh man. It's a process. Anticipate it. Let's say it took you 7 years, right? Like I say 7 because it takes 7 years for the cells in your body to regenerate. And that's actually where your unconscious mind is held. It's in the cells of your body. So even if it took you 7 years till you were fundamentally changed, would it be worth it? Right? And I'm not saying it's going to take that long. You'll notice a change within one day if you take the stuff seriously. But really like zoom out. And we need to really get away from this instant gratification thinking. Like we grew up with microwave meals, all that stuff. Like we're so programmed to want stuff instantly. And again, you can change in a moment, but also let's zoom out and let's say, where do I really want to be 2 years from now, 5 years, 10 years from now? And if that compels you and you want to really see like, hey, what am I capable of in this life? Like, please like connect with Ryan, connect with me. Like there's a power in the network and the community. And the world's in a pretty bad spot, and I'm dedicated to change that. I know you are too, Ryan. And so let's come together, right? Let's make this awesome for everyone, and let's really achieve the best we can with our lives.
Yep, Mitchell, appreciate your mission. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk again.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you having me on. See ya.